Welcome everyone tuning in. We are excited for tonight's live stream. My name is Juan Moya, digital strategist of Anabaptist World, and we have very special guests tonight with us. We have some members of Mennonite Action. Welcome, guys. How are you guys doing? All right.
Thank you
Thumbs
for
up.
having us.
Well, before we jump into introducing each and every one of you, I want to go over a, a brief bio of what Mennonite Action is. So, Mennonite Action is a movement of Mennonites bonded by a common belief that they have a responsibility to use their voices as powerfully as possible for the cause of peace and justice. They are mobilizing fellow Mennonites and Anabaptists across the United States and Canada to use creative, nonviolent actions to demand a ceasefire, end the U.S. and Western funded occupation of Palestine, and build for a lasting peace. They are Mennonites and Anabaptists rooted in values that their cultural or spiritual ancestors passed down: peace, justice, community, mutual aid, and service. They know that these shared values fly higher than any nation's flag, and they refuse to turn a blind eye to violence and oppression, no matter who is perpetrating it, even and especially their own governments. They know that what's happening right now in Israel and Palestine is unprecedented and tragic. They draw on their Mennonite history of opposing war and in providing aid and relief to Palestine and to Middle East. They are making a choice to act together publicly as Mennonites in this critical moment. Without further ado, welcome Anna, Michael, Sarah, and Nick. Welcome to this live stream. How are you, each and every one of you, feeling tonight? All
Doing
right.
great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And maybe we can go down in the order that we see our screens. Maybe Anna, Michael, Sarah, and Nick, if you can introduce yourselves, share a little bit of your background with Mennonite Action, what roles you lead, and yeah, where people want to get to know you guys.
Okay, thanks so much. It's great to be here with everyone. My name is Anna Johnson, and I currently live on the land of the Pokagon Potawatomi in South Bend, Indiana, where I'm a PhD student at Notre Dame studying Peace Studies and Sociology. I grew up in Iowa City, and before I moved to South Bend, I lived and worked in Palestine for a number of years, including with Mennonite Central Committee. And currently, I am on the steering committee of Mennonite Action and also very involved in our Michiana chapter here in the region. So it's great to be a part of the conversation.
My name is Michael George, and I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I am a high school teacher at Lancaster Mennonite and formerly taught at Doc Mennonite Academy and Philadelphia Mennonite High School as well. So I'm a Palestinian American Mennonite. My father was born in Palestine in 1942 and became a refugee at 6 years old in 1948. So I'm on the steering committee of Mennonite Action, and also I've been involved with MennoPIN, that's Mennonite Palestine Israel Network, for 5 or 6 years, and have helped to facilitate what we call the Twinning with Gaza initiative, where we had partners, where we have partners in Gaza for like the last 4 years, and have gotten to know them really well through Zoom meetings, and it's just been a blessing to get to know them, and a tragedy to see what's happening to them right now.
Thanks, y'all. Hi, I'm Sarah Nahar. I use she or they pronouns, calling in today from the Haudenosaunee space, Onondaga Nation land specifically. And prior to having an opportunity to be on the steering committee of Mennonite Action, my work has been with community peacemaker teams and community peacemaker teams, which is committed to building partnerships that transform violence and oppression, have been in Hebron al-Khalil since 1994, 1995. And so supporting that team, as well as doing this work around the world, has shown me that Palestine is a global struggle, and that from Turtle Island, what some people call here North America, to Palestine, this occupation is a crime, right? So just connecting struggles has been a lot of what has nourished me. And prior to being with community peacemaker teams, I had the opportunity to represent North America in Mennonite World Conference Youth and Young Adult Executive Committee. And for me, that was incredibly formative in my experience of what it meant to be church, that it's not only your local church, not only your conference, not only your nation, but also the world. And so that was actually where I had a chance to meet Juan. So through those type of exchanges, we really belong to one another. And so Mennonite Action is a way that I can continue to express my faith and do that right now.
Thanks, everyone. Hey, all. My name's Nick Martin. I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania on Susquehannock land. I use he, him pronouns. I grew up here in Lancaster attending Community Mennonite Church of Lancaster. And it's actually in my church when I was a high schooler that I first started organizing for peace and justice against the war in Iraq in 2005, 2006. My friends and I started tabling at our high schools, doing alternative to military recruitment education. And that experience really changed the way that I look at the world and inspired me to be a social movement organizer, which is what I've done for my whole life. In October, after Hamas's brutal attacks and Israel's genocidal response, I started talking to a friend of mine, Adam Raymer, and we started attending demonstrations led mostly by Jewish organizations like Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now, Rabbis for a Ceasefire. And we were attending these demonstrations really inspired by the leadership of those organizations. And we said to ourselves, what if we asked Mennonites to take public action and use our cultural and spiritual traditions, used our songs in the way that we see these Jewish-led organizations doing that? Would Mennonites be interested in responding to a call for an organization like that? And so we started asking that question of some folks that we know, including the folks on this call. And Adam and I both ended up quitting our jobs and joining Mennonite Action full-time as the co-directors and staff starting in January. So that's my role on the team, and really honored to be here with all of you. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, thank you all for sharing some of your roles, a little bit of your stories. So we're gonna start off with some questions, and maybe each and every one of you can take some time to answer, or if you feel comfortable with the person next to you answering that question, please do so. So first of all, can you tell us a little bit about Gaza and Palestine right now? What's happening on the ground? What are your experiences?
Yeah, I can talk about that. So what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing from our partner organizations in Gaza is just complete and utter devastation. I don't think we can quite comprehend the level of devastation that they're experiencing. Just to give you two examples of our partners, just to personalize it. My friend Tarek, who was the facilitator in Gaza for our Twinning with Gaza program, is now studying in the United States at a Mennonite university. And during the past 9 months, he's lost 3 sisters, and his family has had to move frequently throughout Gaza. And just to show you a picture, this is Tarek's niece, Tulin. And she's living in a tent in Deir al-Balah, which is central Gaza. and they're struggling to find enough food to eat. They don't have medications. They don't have a lot of fresh food, fresh water. And so just the situation is horrible. So I think of Tulane a lot. And another one of our partners was I should refer to them in their present tense, is the Gaza YMCA. It was the building was destroyed, but their organization is still alive. Many people from the Gaza YMCA, both Christians and Muslims. It's a Christian-led organization, a very small Christian population in Gaza, but it's known as a place of Christian and Muslim dialogue. And many of these Christians and Muslims are now sheltering together in 2 churches in Gaza City. In fact, right now, the board president of the Gaza YMCA is sheltering in the Holy Family Catholic Church, and he has been for months. I've had the opportunity, along with some others in MennoPIN, to actually Zoom with him as he's sheltering in the church. And it's just a horrible situation. They don't have fresh food. Many times it's not dangerous, or it's too dangerous to go outside. They've been told at least 3 times that they needed to evacuate, but they refuse to go because they view that as simply a death wish, that they'll be shot if they leave the church. And they have good reason to believe that. And so, yeah, it's heartbreaking that this is continuing, and yeah, I don't think we quite comprehend the devastation socially of it as well. Many of our partners have fled outside of the country. Some are in Qatar, some are in Cairo, Egypt, some are even in the United States, and they're just trying to start their lives over, while at the same time worrying about their friends and family in Gaza.
And I would just add to that, I'm also in touch with several friends who I got to know when I was working with MCC, and MCC has also partners in Gaza that we were able to visit. And I used to reflect when I would visit Gaza. I would try to reflect when I left that there is also life, in the midst of devastation. And a spirit that's ongoing. And I'm sure to some extent, I mean, of course, that's still true, but I also feel like the last 10 months is like seeing daily that spirit just get pummeled as well. And when I'm in touch with my friends, one of whom, Amjad, has been featured in an Anabaptist Witness piece, his story, I asked him a few days ago how he was, and his response is often, fine, how are you? Even though they've been displaced so many times. But this weekend, he said, so sad. The red zone is very close. The bombing is very close. Some shrapnel reached us, and the sounds are terrifying, and the children are screaming. And so I'm in touch mostly with a couple of folks who are young fathers, and just, thinking of the situation, not only of the bombs, which that makes clear, but also the cases of polio have now been officially reported, starvation, lack of access to water. So just to echo what Michael said, I think the situation is so much more urgent than we can even kind of comprehend.
Thanks for sharing that. Well, talking about Gaza and Palestine, do you partner with other organizations to maybe do some co-working? How does that happen?
Yes, we partner with other organizations. We just finished working on an interfaith action in DC with a group called Interfaith Action for Palestine. So we partnered with a bunch of other organizations, including Jewish Voice for Peace, If Not Now, Rabbis for Ceasefire, Hindus for Human Rights, Christians for Free Palestine, Faith for Black Lives, Muslim Alliance for Sexual and Gender Diversity. And so some of these other faith-based groups that are also calling for a ceasefire and end to the genocide had the opportunity to mobilize together in Washington, D.C. And I'm sure we'll talk about it more later, but it's been one of the really rewarding parts of starting Mennonite Action is the opportunity to build relationships with other faith-based groups and learn from one another. So that's been really powerful.
And would you say that the big part of your year has involved Gaza and Palestine, or do you guys have other projects simultaneously working? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we definitely formed out of an urgency to call for and pressure our governments for a ceasefire, and that remains. That I would say that absolutely remains our primary purpose. And so all of our work is focused around Palestine and Gaza, and focused on meeting with our representatives, pressuring our representatives in particular to ask them to call for a ceasefire.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that is one of the unique aspects that Mennonite Action is bringing and inviting people into. Anna mentioned Mennonite Central Committee. I mentioned Christian peacemaker teams. There are other orgs. Michael mentioned MennoPIN, and including our church, MCUSA, in 2017 passed a resolution seeking peace in Israel-Palestine, right? So there are a number of groups that are affiliated with Mennonites and Anabaptists working in this arena, and it is wonderful to collaborate with them. And Mennonite Action found a specific pocket that it could add value, doing something that most Mennonites would rather not do. That is going to your congressional and senator reps and speaking as a constituent, taxpaying or not. I know some Mennonites are working on not paying war taxes because of our pacifist stance, but regardless, we are living in districts that representatives ostensibly represent us. And so they needed to hear directly from us, cutting through the mainstream saber rattling and genocide encouraging, cutting through to say, not in our name. And we are a number of your constituents, and we are organized to say that our faith does not enable this work and to push back on Christian Zionism, because sometimes Christians do come and meet with these representatives, and sometimes because of Christian Zionist theology, which due to particular apocalyptic understanding of what will happen in the future, allows and enables this type of violence that we're seeing. And so there are two things going on here where Mennonite Action is particularly positioned to make a difference, and that is assisting us in thinking about collectively our theology and our theological position, and then not being the quiet in the land, but being humble yet bold enough to go directly to our representatives and have that be a focus of a point of pressure. And this pressure fits within our understanding of nonviolence, which we can, talk more about later if we want to get into why the different strategies and tactics that we're taking right now. And this can work very well, so people can go on CPT delegations and come back with information that supports. They can work with MennoPIN on education and add in that support. They can continue advocacy at broader levels or direct service with MCC and come in and support. But I want to turn this back over to Michael, if possible, too. I came into this as an activist, as someone who understands that even despite my inclinations of not really paying attention to what's going on in government, I must, because of my position within the context of U.S. empire. So I came in as an activist. But Michael, I know that your story is a little bit different, and you could also speak to, how Mennonite Action has been ministering to those who don't see themselves as activists at first.
Yeah. I'm a social studies teacher. I'm a historian. I've always cared, deeply about peace and justice. But I never really thought of myself as an activist, and I don't know if I think of myself as an activist right now. However, Mennonite Action has helped facilitate opportunities for me to speak out on behalf of my friends in Gaza, to speak out on behalf of my family, but also to speak out as an Anabaptist Christian just for peace. And I try to always stress that we need to have the concept that both Palestinians and Israelis are made in the image of God, and we need to insist on their humanity. That doesn't mean we don't challenge unjust systems. So I feel like I think my personality, I like people to get along, and it's not my natural inclination to speak out, especially when I might ruffle a few feathers. But I feel like my relationships with the people in Gaza and just trying to be true to my identity, I need to speak out on behalf of them. Just one thing to add, I think in Washington, D.C., I had the opportunity, talking about interfaith groups, our senator in Pennsylvania, we had the opportunity to lobby to meet with a staff member. And it was really a moving experience for me. It was 3 Mennonites, one being a Palestinian Mennonite, myself, and 5 members of Rabbis for Ceasefire. And just to be with them and to plead our case to the staffer for peace, and just was a very moving experience for myself and for them. And the other part of the day, myself and a Jewish rabbi, we walked around the Senate building for a couple hours, just trying to make appointments with senators. And it was just a really humbling experience to be walking around with a rabbi, me, a Palestinian American, trying to get the attention of our senators. I don't know if they paid attention to us, but I know it was meaningful to us.
Okay, thank you. So one thing we're curious about is we know there's different methods to do protests. One of the things that you guys do is using things such as singing as forms of public protest. Why is that?
I love this question. I can take a crack at it, y'all. Well, I would say, first of all, just for me, growing up, going to church, being Mennonite is what inspired me to kind of what Michael was just talking about. That was the foundation of my beliefs in peace and justice, and following in the footsteps of the example of Jesus. And so the prayers that we bring into our actions, the songs that we sing, for me are kind of inseparable from action. And when we sing hymns while we're taking action, it brings me back to what I believe. And it also helps me see those hymns that I grew up with in a totally different light, and brings meaning to them in a way that I never could have imagined before doing it. And so that's been a really meaningful thing for me, is to get to see singing hymns and praying while taking action in a different light. And then I guess I'd also say that I think it's important that we bring our full selves into the actions that we take. And I know growing up, sometimes I would go to protests against the war in Iraq, and I would ask myself this question, is it okay for me to be Mennonite while I'm at this protest? Or is that something that is that a separate thing than what I am? Am I just a Mennonite at church, or am I can I publicly say that I am a Mennonite and this is why I'm here? And that's something I wasn't sure about when I was younger. And in starting Mennonite Action, it's something that I felt really strongly about, that it actually is important to be fully who you are and talk about your motivations for what you do. And so we can do that in a lot of different ways. We can do it just by saying it, but we can also do it by bringing our faith traditions, whatever they are for you personally as a Mennonite or a Christian. And so for me, that's often singing hymns or praying, or for other folks that might be like quilts or other things. But I think whatever that is for you, I think it's important to integrate that with action. But I'm really curious for other folks here, what's the case for you? Like, how do you think about singing hymns or other parts of being Mennonite in like this public action way?
I totally agree with kind of the bringing your whole self. I think the other thing it happens to do is really unsettle what we think is a protest. And when we had our first gathering, unannounced hymn sing outside our Representative Yakim's office here in Mishawaka, there were several, TV crews that came out, and they almost didn't even know how to ask the questions, because they were just like, what is this? And like, this is so different than protests we've covered. And I think, I hope that seeing that represented has made more people think, maybe that's for me, whatever it is that it looks like. It might not be singing hymns in that way, but that more people can show up, can be sort of publicly taking a stand, and to also, in some senses, make that accessible for more folks. And I think that we continue to think about doing that. For me, also, it's made worship so much more meaningful. Every time in worship, I'm a member at Kern Road Mennonite Church here in South Bend, and every time we sing a song that was sung in our protest in DC, or anytime we've been together as Mennonite Action, it moves me in a totally different way in worship. So I think it has this, both the impact out in the world and the thing it's doing in us, from having that experience of taking those songs to new places.
So just the importance of singing. I was one of the 135 people arrested in the Capitol building in January. And I was very nervous. In fact, it was snowing that morning. And I was in my hotel room, and I'm like, I wouldn't mind if those buildings were closed, right? But then I got word, hey, they're open. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this. So I was very nervous walking around the Capitol building. But then as we started singing, and even after, we all were arrested and we had hand zip ties on, like, we kept singing. And, it almost, like, in a weird way, felt like, Mennonite school choir, in that we were not going to stop singing. We didn't stop singing even on the bus and it was just a very interesting, bizarre feeling of singing on this bus in Washington, D.C., these Mennonite hymns, looking up at the Capitol building. I've led countless field trips to Washington, D.C. with my students, and I probably have never imagined, I'm in a police van singing hymns with other Mennonites. And so it was almost like that was like the only thing, or that was the thing that got me through it, was almost this like Mennonite muscle memory of singing hymns, even as after we were arrested. And really, like, I don't think people had a sense of fear. And I know that's not the experience of everyone who protests, but yeah, it was a very calming feeling to be singing hymns when at first I was so nervous.
And I had another question following up to that. If you can tell us a little bit more about the arrests that happened and what was the strategy there? How you say, okay, we have to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. What did that look like?
Yeah. Well, in January, like Michael said, 135 people were arrested in the Cannon Rotunda, which is a office building on Capitol Hill. And the strategy isn't really to get arrested. It's to go and sing in the rotunda, and to do that to raise awareness about what we're calling for, which is a ceasefire, end of the occupation, and end of the genocide, release of all hostages and political prisoners, and to demonstrate that through singing, through chants, and through banners. And to do that for as long as we can, to be disruptive in this way that causes all the staffers from all the offices to come and watch us, causes all the TV cameras that we know are in there to turn their cameras around and focus on us and stop pretending like everything's normal, to disrupt that sense of normality and say, no, there's a massacre happening every day. We're not going to sit on the sidelines. We're going to go in here and we're going to bring our faith, bring our traditions, and show up in the way that we know how, which is singing hymns and holding up banners and disrupting in this nonviolent way. And the police's response to that is to decide to arrest us. And because they decide to arrest us, it often leads to more media coverage. And our goal in getting media coverage is also to ask other Mennonites, other Anabaptists, other Christians, and people of faith to join us in taking action, to see themselves as part of this movement, to feel like, yes, you too can take action in this way. You can show up in your own way. It doesn't have to be singing hymns, but show up in a way that feels real for you and take action. And so that's kind of the purpose of doing civil disobedience. And like Michael said, it can feel really uncomfortable. It's not supposed to feel comfortable, right? But in doing it, I would say we went through a really transformative experience together and built these bonds. And I think a lot of folks that have participated in Mennonite Action in different ways have, and I'll just say it's true for me, like I feel so much more connected with my faith, with other folks that I've gotten to meet in the last, unfortunately, almost the last year. We've really built this incredible community, and it feels like an opportunity to build something together in the face of something really horrible that's happening. So, just extend an invitation to folks that are listening to join us at these kinds of actions in the future, and we'll give you a lot of support in doing so, and there will be more opportunities.
Another thing that I was going to follow up is, how is this different from other things Mennonites have done for peace in Palestine and Israel, and how does this complement other efforts, from example MennoPIN, is that they call it, MCC, CPT, and other groups?
Mm-hmm. Great. Sometimes in movement building, we think about movements as an ecosystem, like a natural system. There is hopefully a biodiverse and unique thing for every plant, animal, mineral, person in that ecosystem to do, and they are in communication with one another. So Mennonite Action saw within this ecosystem that there is space to do direct and public action, as well as nonviolent direct action. This includes the singing in the rotunda, it includes lobbying, it includes inviting Mennonites to act publicly. And CPT on the ground daily, works to accompany children, primarily to and from school, amidst Israeli military checkpoints in the matrix of control that is Hebron al-Khalil in the southern West Bank. MennoPIN does an incredible amount of education work. And Mennonite Central Committee continues to do direct advocacy, and they too have a Washington office, so there's a collaboration there and working together, and on the ground around the world, continuing to place Mennonites and other people in direct contact with those who are experiencing suffering and who are and supporting their resilience and their efforts, right? And so that's a much broader org there. So specifically, most Mennonites have worked in ways that have not engaged the U.S. government directly. And this is what Mennonite Action is doing. And in order to do this, we do not want to give up our integrity. We do not want to give up the sense that we have that the kingdom of God is not coming in through any government, but is broader than that and is transnational and connects all peoples, right? We don't give those things up. And so it's through the words of the songs, it's through the conversations that, as Michael mentioned, that you're having in the halls of Congress as you move through there humbly and boldly, going to speak to your reps, that this is the type of formation that we can take, that we can get to as people of faith in engaging these places that for many have been an uncomfortable space to work. There have been Mennonites that have individually worked in these areas, but this is one of the first times. I think an exception to that would be during the Vietnam War and working on conscientious objector status, which permitted Mennonites, Quakers, Brethren, and a few others to not have to serve in the military. This time, we are not there advocating for ourselves and for our young people to be preserved. We are advocating for every young person to be preserved. We are advocating for our tax dollars to not be used for bombs, for weapons, for security apparatuses, because we're saying our faith is telling us that security is in our relationships with one another, with the divine, with the earth, with ourselves, and not in violence. And so this is an opportunity to do something that's difficult together. And the other thing that Mennonite Action does is to create toolkits for how to take public action. In this case, not only at the scale of lobbying and with your reps, but in your local community, right? As we enter an election year and Mennonite Action is paying attention to the impacts of who is in different positions, we are equipping Mennonites to be people who can resource their communities for stability, for connection, and for security that does not rely on coercive force, because Jesus never did, and so we don't want to either, right? So we're a part of also connecting with movements that are working on things like racial justice, like prison abolition, other movements within the United States as well that recognize that every dollar that is going to support genocidal regimes, authoritarian, regimes is taking away from our communities and making us also unsafe. So it's about collective liberation and the chance to participate with an organization that is committed to working with other social movements, as well as inviting Mennonites into these public spaces, is what I think make Mennonite Action unique at this time.
Yeah, and what is our responsibility as Anabaptists and Mennonites to speak out against injustices in the world, and how can others who are interested join this movement?
I'm actually going to keep going a little bit because I definitely want to make sure to say too that Mennonite Action has partnered with the Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery Coalition, because most Mennonites here are not indigenous. We are descendants of or in connection with settlers. And we are definitely implicated in settler colonization, such as we protest and what's happening in Palestine. We're also looking at it here. So I also want to say that's another part of the movement that we have been connecting with, because it's a struggle for indigenous justice in many ways. And we have to think about what it means for us as Mennonites to be practicing an indigenous wisdom tradition from the Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean, right? So Michael George and a number of other Palestinian Christian Mennonites have, they have that ancestral lineage and connection. Those of us who do not, we need to think very carefully about how we do that well. And so some of the other partnerships that have formed in this are also commitments to addressing historic and ongoing anti-Semitism, right? We are in this for all people and for this collective liberation. So I just wanted to add that other piece, and I'll hand it to my colleagues to talk about how they can join directly.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to join and participate in Mennonite Action. As Sarah said, we often release toolkits that are ways to learn how to take action in your own local area. And so we've done that a number of times, had these days of action where people organize meetings or demonstrations at their representatives' offices, and we'll continue to release more of those toolkits in the future. We also have monthly mass meetings, and that's really, if you haven't participated in Mennonite Action before, that's a really good way just to join and kind of hear what we're all about and get to participate and hear from some of our leaders. And so this month, our mass meeting is actually this coming Thursday evening at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. And we're going to be just reflecting on the mobilizations that we held this summer. So learning about our All God's Children March for a Ceasefire, learning about our DC mobilization that we've talked about a little bit this evening, and hearing from different speakers. And then next month, we'll be having a mass meeting connecting racial capitalism to Palestine. Sarah will be leading that call. And that's another opportunity to join in and learn and participate in the movement. And so you can find any of those events and some of our toolkits on our website, MennoniteAction.org. Other folks have thoughts about, like, how have you seen people joining in your local area? What do you guys think is a good way for people to get plugged in locally?
Well, if anybody watching happens to be in the Michiana area, we are having regular potlucks as a way of gathering and being in community, kind of like the mass calls, but in person, to learn and build relationship. We know that we're stronger together, and we need this relational aspect of this work. And so that's what we have coming up here, and that we will be sustaining regular prayer services with others in the community as well. So there are a number of ways to get involved, and I think that that's true in a number of places around the country.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. I know it takes a lot of time to, get ready, plan this event. So thank you for joining us. And I think, people have the tools that you guys are sharing constantly in social media to be able to be part of this movement. And real quick, if maybe one of you can share how we can find you in social media. How can people follow you?
Yes, you can just follow us at Mennonite Action on almost any social media platform. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Am I missing any? I think we're YouTube. We're on all of them. So just go to whatever the platform is /Mennonite Action, and you can find us there.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and we continue to pray and take action in order for the injustices in the world, all the injustices in the world, to come to an end. I know it's very difficult work, and it's one step at a time, but hopefully this is one step into that light that we can share a moment of peace in the different areas that this takes place. So thank you so much. Thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. We reached the end of our live stream. And if you want more information, once again, feel free to look at MennoniteAction.org. Is that the website?
That's right.
Where you can find all the information and how you can share locally to this cause. Mhm. So thank you guys. Any final words, or we're good?
We look forward to seeing folks on our gatherings. Thank you so much for having us here.
Thanks, folks.
Yeah.
Take care. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.